This little rabbit of mine has been continually today escaping this extremely generous enclosure that I've built for her. So keeping an eye on this one. What's up you guys, my name is the Cherno, welcome. Why do I keep doing that intro? It's every time I face a camera, it's like, hey what's up guys, my name is the Cherno, welcome. Like, I don't want to live that life anymore, you know? What's up you guys? I thought that I would make a little bit of a vlog today. Just feeling it, you know? It's a Saturday morning, my wife's at work, I'm all here alone by myself, and I figured it would be a good opportunity to kind of share a little bit of what I've been working on with you because I'm so excited about it. I really want to start getting into doing these kind of chill videos a lot more. In fact, I have been doing stuff like this on Patreon for quite some time now, but I want to kind of bring it to YouTube. I guess now that I've, let's just say, practiced on the patrons, because that's what I seem to do a lot of. I hope that you guys are doing okay in the kind of state of the world right now. I know that a lot of people are struggling with so many things, and it absolutely sucks, everything that's going on. I'm not gonna try and like downplay that or anything, but I also don't really want to talk about it too much, because on one hand I think that a lot of people are talking about it, and also I don't know, I just feel like I just don't want to like capitalize off of this horrible situation that's going on with the world right now. But what I did want to do today is actually take a look at some of the questions that you guys asked me, because if you remember a few videos back, I hit 200,000 subscribers and I said that kind of as a celebration type deal for that, I was going to make a video. I was gonna make a Q&A video. This exposure just changing every like 5 seconds. So I asked you guys for questions on both that video and also on Instagram. And I think I got like 300 questions on each platform. So I'm gonna see if I can go back on Instagram and just see some of these questions. I am gonna make a Q&A video, but I just thought it would be nice to maybe during these kind of vlogs that I do, just to answer a couple questions or something like that. So that we wouldn't have to wait like a year until I finally get the chance to make that video. Okay, here we go, I found it. And there's so many questions here. So I don't really, let's just pick one randomly. I'm just gonna put my finger down this one. No, that's a bad one. Okay, this one. Why did you start making YouTube videos? This is by Daigo PGS. I'll put it up on the screen. Why did I start making YouTube videos? That's an excellent question. It's a long story and maybe something that I'll save for a future video, but I will give a short answer here. So I've been kind of involved with media for a long time in general, ever since probably 2006, I want to say even. I was maybe 11 years old. I really liked filming stuff on my camera. My parents had like a little handy cam, and me and my friends would always like mess around with it and try and make like, you know, action films and that kind of stuff. I'm sure a lot of people have a very similar childhood that grew up with cameras in the house. But eventually it got to the point where I decided that I wanted to become a filmmaker. That was my career journey. I wanted to be like a film, like I think producer or director of photography specifically. And I think I was pretty much in my final year of high school when I decided that, you know what, I not only like being creative and love making content and art and all of that stuff, I also really like maths and I also really like technical things. And so I decided that I'm gonna try and learn programming because I wanna be able to, like I was doing a lot of visual effects for movies that I was making, for these little films that I made. And you know, I was making 3D models, doing 3D renderings, putting them into After Effects, compositing everything. I was doing all of that stuff all the time. That was like my life in my final year of high school and the year before, I think, as well. And so it got to the point where I was like, well, you know what? Why don't I try and build a renderer like this so that I can actually render all of these 3D graphics myself instead of using like... Did you guys hear that? She did it. I cannot believe this. How did she? It has to be that gap. It has to be that gap. You. What is wrong with you? Why do you always feel the need to get out of this little amazing enclosure that I've built you? Huh? Seriously, what do you have to say for yourself? Okay, we're back. So what was I saying? Seriously, I completely forgot. So it was around then that I decided that I kind of wanted to go at creating these renderers myself. I wanted to be able to like find out what all the algorithms are, what all of the technical code is to build something that can create images and create 3D renderings of things. Now back then I just completely had no idea how to write code. I'd never written code in my life. Maybe I'd done some kind of HTML or something for like IT class, but I had never programmed. I was about 16 and never written any code in my life. So I decided that I would start learning programming. Now back then Minecraft was really big, Notch was doing all these live streams, he was using Java, and me as a 16-year-old looking at this game that I love playing with my friends and it was written in Java, I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn Java. And also because a lot of people were always saying that, oh, Java's, pretty easy to learn, C++ is this hard language, it's used by professional companies. Sorry, this is so bright. It's used by all these professional companies, Java's really nice and simple, start with that. And so I did. And about half a year into that, I decided that, you know what? I'm gonna start making videos of this kind of learning journey of mine, of how I'm kind of learning all of these 3D graphics, all of this kind of cool stuff in Java and all of this stuff. I'm gonna start making videos of that. I'm gonna show people what I know, because at that point as well in high school, I was, helping people with maths every now and then. Like, just people would come up to me and be like, hey, let's work on this problem together. And as I would explain to them how to solve this mathematical equation, I realized that, hang on a minute, this makes a lot more sense to me now, because it's not, I've had to explain it to this person. And taking that in mind, I started making videos because I thought that, well, if I kind of try and teach this stuff, I'm gonna have to obviously do a lot of research on it. I'm gonna have to understand this really well so that I can communicate that to others. And that's basically why I started making videos. Now, since then, of course, it's been, I don't know, my very first videos on that topic were probably 2011, and then I, on a different channel. And then, eventually I started this channel and it just kind of, went on, and it's been a while. Things have changed a lot. I didn't even know C++ when I started this channel. But then of course I started going to university. I decided to not become a filmmaker. I decided to not study film, and I decided to instead become a software engineer, because that's what I really wanted to do. And fast forward 8 years of my life later, I've decided that a mix of both is probably where I like to be. I really like art, I really like filmmaking, I really like making videos, but then I also need to, I really like programming and I really like building things. And I guess the happy medium that I've stumbled upon is programming art. So in other words, programming graphics and 3D rendering and all of that stuff, and game engines. So that is how we are here today. The other thing that I really want to show you guys is the kind of, I was going to show you my office, but that's going to be a very terrible idea because it looks like an absolute junkyard right now. But here we are. This is kind of what my desk looks like right now. What we're going to do here is, I really wanted to, I'm just going to put this down here. It's always so awkward trying to put this somewhere, especially if things are in the way. What I want to do here today is show you guys a little bit about the stuff that I've been working on this week for Hazel. So for those of you who don't know, there's kind of two versions of Hazel. There's the public version of Hazel, which I constantly develop as part of the Game Engine series, but then there's also my version of Hazel, which is called Hazel Dev. And Hazel Dev is something that patrons have access to. It's like a repository of code that we have 3D rendering in, and it's all of that stuff. And this past week, in fact these past 2 weeks, I've been doing live streams. I've done one a week so far, and I maybe will do more. Patreon.com/the Cherno is where I do all of these live streams. If you're interested in showing your support and also getting access to the live streams, then the link will be in the description below. But basically I'm just streaming myself working on everything. It's completely, raw. It's just hours of me trying to solve problems and figure out all of this stuff. So the stuff that I've actually worked on and the stuff that I've implemented into Hazel these past 2 weeks have essentially revolved around environment maps. So we had a fairly kind of basic way of dealing with environments and environment maps, which are very important for something called image-based lighting, which is like a rendering thing that's, usually used with physically based rendering. It basically means that you can sample the environment around you to try and figure out the color of an object that you're trying to render, because obviously the environment affects everything that is in it. If I have literally have nothing useful around. If I have this candle here, then you know, if my walls are green, this candle's gonna appear slightly green because, you know, the light bounces off the wall, hits the light and hits the candle, and then you get your green color. So to simulate that, we basically have these environment maps, these cube maps inside a game engine that basically is used to try and render an object with the influence of that light color. So previously in Hazel, we were doing this using just like an 8-bit like cube map that had to be generated in an offline tool and then imported into Hazel. It was this huge kind of pain thing that I didn't like at all. And so we switched to using these equirectangular or lat long, they're sometimes called kind of image maps of HDR environments. We can now import those right into Hazel. It will like run some compute shaders and figure out everything it needs to actually put them into to convert them into a cube map, to filter that cube map, to create something called an irradiance texture. It does all of that stuff for you and we get a fairly beautiful image. Let's take a look. So to show you guys what I mean, this is basically how Hazel used to work for all of our IBL maps or our environment maps. We had to basically create this cube map that is an 8-bit texture. If you look up here, you can see it's an 8-bit texture. You can see it looks fairly contrasted because we've had to kind of squeeze all of that HDR-ness into an 8-bit kind of texture format. So it looks pretty crunchy. This was called our radiance map. We also used an offline tool called CMFT Studio to generate an irradiance map. This would be also used for IBL. So we have these two maps, which we've had to kind of manually generate from a texture that was in an equirectangular format, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, this has a lot of downsides, and another huge problem with this is that we only had one MIP of this. We just had this full resolution texture, and for physically based rendering to model different roughness models, it's really important that you have a good kind of MIP chain of properly filtered MIPs, because we basically have to downsample this texture to, you know, all across the MIP chain, but we were just using OpenGL for that. We just said glgen MIP maps and it created all the MIP maps, and that was kind of like a very basic kind of rough, so to speak, way of just getting this to work as quickly as possible. But what we actually wanted to do was use a proper kind of filtering algorithm to actually filter it properly all across the MIP chain and also generate an irradiance texture. So what we actually do now is we take in something like this, which is an equirectangular environment map. And you can see here that it's a .hdr file and it's a 32-bit image. So what we were kind of doing before was just basically taking this and converting it into an 8-bit image like this. Now, by doing that, you know, we lose detail because you can see here that this is massively overexposed. But if we bring that down, everything else seems kind of dark. And we kind of have this issue of, but you know, what do I pick? I can't possibly fit all of the detail that is within this image into an 8-bit format. In fact, you can't even see this. You can see this is completely blown out white. But if I go in here and start to bring down that exposure, you can see that we recover all of the detail there. So the solution really is to actually load an HDR texture inside your engine, and then the engine can decide what the exposure should be. A lot of games do this by using something called adaptive exposure, where they just basically look at what the pixels are that the camera is looking at, and then they try and determine an exposure level, much like auto exposure on a camera. So we can do that because we have this HDR texture pipeline. So now what happens is you can just load this texture, this one image, this one .hdr image into Hazel, and it will automatically run some compute shaders to generate a cube map that looks like this, along with a properly filtered MIP chain using one of Unreal Engine 4's algorithms, which they released in a paper, and then also generate this irradiance map. All of that happens on the fly in about half a second on my computer just by dropping in this image. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here I've just opened Hazelnut, which is kind of the editor for Hazel. Let me just scale up this gun because the units we're using here are meters and obviously guns are quite small. So this is what we have kind of by default by loading this gun model with this animation. Let me just stop this animation because it's kind of going to get annoying. I just have this basic control here. We can stop the animation, put it back to the start. Okay, so what you see in the background is the environment map. It's just being rendered as a skybox, and we can actually control which LOD or which MIP level is being rendered by just using this control here. So you can see I can kind of bring it all the way to maximum sharpness here, which is just the kind of the first MIP number 0. And then I can gradually kind of bring that into, well, very extreme low MIPS, which is basically just a solid color, as you can see here. This is just controlling the background and what we see in the background. Now you'll see that this is very overexposed, but that's okay because we can bring down this exposure and you can see that we get all of that detail back because it is in fact an HDR map. Let's bring that back a little bit. So we have our gun here, and you can see that it has a roughness here of 0.2. So if I kind of go into here, you can see that it's slightly blurred, but the blurring looks really nice, and that's kind of the point. If I bring it all the way to 0 roughness, which basically makes it look like a mirror, you can see it's quite sharp. And then as I increase the roughness, it really gradually and beautifully, I think, blurs out, which is really cool. And then eventually with a roughness of 0 means it's basically not reflecting anything. All you can see is kind of the contribution of the light of the environment map's color to the kind of light that hits the surface of this model. And the same works for plastics as well. If I bring the metalness to 0, you can see that we kind of have a very glossy reflective plastic versus a very rough plastic here. And in fact, I think all of these reflections are going to look a little bit more impressive if we load a normal map. So I'll go over here and I'll load the normal map for this gun and enable it. Okay, so now you can see we have a lot more detail, and we kind of have this really cool looking kind of noisy, I guess, reflection because of the rough surface of this gun. And I can obviously still control the roughness as much as I want here. And you can see that it does in fact look pretty nice. Let's play that animation again. And we have a nice gun that, of course, because of the environment map, because of the fact that we're using image-based lighting, it really does look like it's part of the scene. We can also load the albedo texture, which might make it look a little bit more realistic here. And of course, there's also a metalness and roughness texture, which I could load, but I'll just kind of leave this off here, but just so that we can look at the nice reflections that we have here. And of course, the cool thing here is that I can drop any environment map I want into this and it will just work. So if I go to HDRI Haven, for example, which is one of my favorite resources for these environment maps, if I go to HDRIs, these are all free to use. You can see they've got plenty of categories here. If we go to like sunrise, sunset, you can see all of these different images here. What I can do is I can simply download one that I think looks nice. So let's maybe find a nice looking one. Let's go with this one maybe, pink sunrise. So we can download this in a variety of resolutions. I'm just going to click 4K. That should be good enough for us. It's going to download the file here. So I've got the file over here now. I'll copy the path to this file, go back to Hazel. I'll click load environment map. I'll navigate to that and I'll just open it. And you can see that it's now loaded the environment map. Our scene looks completely different. We now have this pink sunrise that we downloaded from the internet. It takes like half a second to load. We can now visualize this with a new environment map. You can see it looks really nice. I can, of course, increase the exposure to make it a little bit more visible, but you can see it does in fact blow out the sky. But if I bring that exposure back, you can see all that detail comes back, which is super nice. And we now have this beautiful kind of night scene with this gun that definitely looks like it's part of the scene. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Just wanted to kind of show you guys where Hazel Dev was at and keep you updated with the development of Hazel. One of my biggest plans and I guess goals for this year, and what I really want to do with Hazel Dev specifically and with this kind of 3D version of Hazel, is actually create a 3D scene just from scratch and then have that rendered in Hazel and maybe make kind of like a cool atmospheric environment that you can walk around in and experience with maybe like some cool sound design and everything that will make it just very atmospheric, I guess, like really like an experience that you can like, you know, sit down, put your headphones on, darken the room and just experience. And the kind of aesthetic that I'm leaning towards creating at the moment is some sort of like Soviet, you know, post-apocalypse like environment, something like Stalker or Metro, that kind of, I guess, feel. That's what I'm kind of going for. Now, I haven't started working on this scene yet, but that is the plan. So I'll probably take you guys along with me on that little journey and keep doing these kind of vlogs and talking about all of that. Let me know what you guys think of that idea. Please let me know if you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button if you did. And of course, if you want to help support the channel and catch all of these live streams where I actually develop the Hazel engine, then patreon.com/Cherno is the best way to support me. And I just want to give a huge thank you, obviously, to everyone who does help me that does help support me in this time, because I know that it's very challenging for everyone, and it kind of sucks that we're going through all of this, but I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, everyone. Obviously, not just people who just support me on Patreon, but all of you people who watch my videos, because that's the reason why I'm sitting here in front of you, and I love you all. Stay safe, everyone. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.